Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Teresa Carlson, CEO of the General Catalyst Institute. Teresa, thank you so much. Great. Welcome to the Steve Show.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
You know, it just keeps on going and going. Do you know Maya McGinnis?
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Teresa Carlson.
You, Maya. Well, I was talking about you backstage.
Teresa is the diva. She's the diva of tech innovation and resilience. And I was sort of thinking, she just had this fantastic summit in Washington. And I loved it. It's one of the reasons I asked her to come here. And we were talking about everything from shipbuilding to tech to every other dimension, AI and what's bringing us on. And it occurred to me that all of this stuff is, you know, going on. But what also is sort of not working in that picture when you think about resilience is the fragility of a lot of the fundamental economic investment possibilities, and that's why I wanted to bring you, both here, and I would have Maya up here as a sounding board to some degree. But Teresa, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, this is great. I haven't been to the Willard in so long for an event, but I used to be here.
This is the Willard reinvented.
Everybody, we used to have all of our events. When I was at Microsoft years ago, 2000 to 2010, we had tons here. So it's fun to be back here. It's a beautiful hotel, and where lobbying started.
Yeah.
Right, where Ulysses S. Grant, for y'all don't know, they would line up he would have his bourbon in the evening, and they would line up to lobby him, and that was where lobbying
Not
came
that you would remember that.
No, but I'm a big bourbon fan, so
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of folks here, and we've got a lot of folks on C-SPAN watching with us now. So, greetings, C-SPAN friends. Look, Teresa, I wanted to get some of that energy that we had of your excellent summit the other day. We talked a lot about technology. We've talked a lot about AI and power. And, I'll ask the same thing I asked Jared Agan from the Energy Dominance Council and others. A lot of this future that I would love you to kind of talk about how important it is to get it right still seems to me to be setting on some really fragile assumptions, like we don't have a depression, or we don't have, as you were saying, an entitlement shock or something that would do this, or, trying to get some of the fundamental factors right. So as you think about AI and the promise of what it may bring, Neil Bradley of the U.S. Chamber is going to be up here shortly. He said, AI, if it doesn't take us up to 4%, why are we doing it? In terms of economic growth. And that could help solve some of the problems that you're talking about. But when it comes to AI and the promise of it, what do we need to get right?
Well, look, with any technology revolution, you have to really think of it, and I think of it always in three ways, and I've been doing this now for 28 years almost. You have to have the right technology, right? It's got to make sense for whatever is happening in the world. You've got to have capital that makes sense, and you've got to have capital that's moving in the right direction, and you have to have policy that works. A lot of people believe in a box that you can do something without the right policies. So if you're not keeping up with what needs to occur policies and politically, then that's a problem. So for us at General Catalyst, for some of you who may not know, we're a capital transformation company. We invest and we build companies. We're about 40 million under management. We invest at global scale. And we primarily, not completely, but primarily invest in these highly regulated industries: healthcare, defense, intelligence, manufacturing, financial services. And what we're seeing at no time like any other is the amount of innovation that's happening. I don't even really like that word so much, but it's really what we're seeing from these entrepreneurs, what they're creating because of technology. Now, your point is it making an impact? Is it going to make an impact to our economy? Would it help our deficit? Will it help us move forward? Well, one of the things I say is you cannot fight gravity. And gravity is here, and what I mean by that, artificial intelligence is here. And so we either have to embrace it and figure out together how it helps us move forward, or we'll stand still and we'll let China and others just get in front of us, and that cannot happen. So when you know gravity is here, you've got to then embrace it and then fight really hard to make sure that you have all those elements. What I think that's working really well right now in the U.S. is we have a lot of things that, we're not perfect, but the things that are working right now really well in the U.S. is you still have all these amazing and smart individuals that are creating technology at a pace and speed like nowhere else. So America, we have the most profound individuals that are so talented, and we don't mind failure. And what I mean by that is we experiment, we fail, we get right back up, and we go right back at it. And that's what makes us so great. We learn from our experimentation. And I now am seeing these companies that we are backing, they start with an idea that they formed, and it doesn't mean that that's where they land. But they move fast, the technology is massive, and they're solving really critical problems with AI. And basic things like, if you think about traditional industries that struggle sometimes even with the right talent, they're solving things like, record keeping, legal, back office, call centers, things that you can use AI really and move much faster. It's also solving a lot of data issues that we have. How do you sort and look at data and really do decision making on that data for intelligence and defense? So long story, I'm way more than cup half full with this. I think AI is going to move us in the right direction. We have issues that we have to along the way, like skills and workforce. We have to make sure that there's equity in everybody that's going to be able to use and benefit from it, not just a few group of tech companies, but we need to make sure that all societies and all groups within the U.S. can really benefit from this.
I interviewed Michael Kratsios, who's the head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House the other day. And to be candid, I think he would agree with everything you said, but his worry right now is that our uptake rate for this technology is not where it needs to be. That the use, the application, if you kind of look at it, you see the surveys out there, still too few companies are bringing AI into a substantial place. So you've got this gap between the vision you just described and what I'm reading in McKinsey surveys and others that industry still has not really made, gulped it down, so to speak. And he said, if we're going to compete with China and with other places in the world, we need that uptake rate to be faster. So I'm interested in what you think, how does that happen? Or is it just going to get to a tipping point where gradual, and then all at once?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because when cloud computing, I'm equating this a lot to my world because I worked in a world where we started cloud computing here in federal government with Amazon. I did that in 2010.
She was the AWS diva.
Yes, I was the cloud gal versus back then. But I equated
big time.
And the thing about cloud is we had no policy to use it. There was no way to acquire it. And people just talked about it. They didn't really understand use cases.
Yeah.
So what we had to do was really work with government and industry to help them define their use cases. Because you can't expect a government or an enterprise just to automatically know how they apply this to their business. So what you're seeing with AI is, and I would say there's going to be a whole new group of companies where you're going to have what I call the evolved system integrator that's going to go in and do transformation across the board with these industries. And they're going to help them define what are the use cases, how do they use AI? Because to your point, I would say it is much slower. And part of the reason it's slower is we talk about it up here. We got to talk about it here. Like how do you, in your industry, in your business, apply artificial intelligence? And it's not necessarily a big, large language model. It's not these big things we talk about. It's why I went back to earlier, how do you use it with record keeping? How do you use it in your marketing? How do you use it with your legal services to help you move faster? And the reason I know that they're going to start utilizing it faster is because it's competition. And a bank, a retail, anybody, they want an unfair advantage. Our government, we should have an unfair advantage on how we operate and be the best we can be, number one. And what drives people to the uptake is competition. And they're like, they're using it, I've got to use it better. And I saw this happen with cloud. They were like, what? They're using this? I got to get busy. So we're early. I agree with you, we're early.
Let's do a test. I'm wondering if Maya has asked a generative AI platform, pick your favorite, how to solve the entitlements crisis.
Oh, I have.
Have you done it?
I have, oh yeah.
What does it come back with?
So I actually had to do a whole strategic plan for what we should be doing, and it was very aligned with what we are thinking about, where there's sometimes we do grassroots stuff and there's sometimes we don't, and it depends on whether the public's open to the issue or not. And so it came up with the idea saying people are talking about this more, it's time to go to the public with AI.
So it gave you a path. It didn't say, sorry, you're never going to solve it, get another job.
No, it was much more optimistic than I was. It led me to feel better. But I will also say I've taken a number of classes. I went to AI boot camp at MIT. I just finished a how to use this in your office at Harvard.
Great.
It was, but I still don't know the answer. So I still think your point is really important, which is like, while the private sector is so good and moving so quickly and the public sector is so broken and moving so slowly, we are not filling, the paces are mismatched, and we are not filling here's specific ways to apply this to your work.
That's
and
right.
so now we're gonna have a personal person who's gonna come in and help us think through it. But
I think you're being really smart with this, and this is where it starts with the leadership level. Every new shift, you have to have it start from the top. You can't say, you can have pushing, but you've got to have that leadership saying, we're going to do a plan. The plan is going to drive where we're going to, and I won't say the country, but I've been running around talking to some different countries. And when you talk to a country, they'll say, how do I do a country transition?
Yeah.
How do I take AI at the country level? And I always have one piece of advice that I learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
When you're going through a big transition and a shift, you want to start with the industry in your government that is the most important. Don't start with the thing that's not important. That sounds anti-intuitive maybe, but if you're moving at the rate and speed that we're moving with AI, you want to start with your industry that's driving the most revenue for you and get it right. It will be the hardest, but once you get that gain, then everything else will actually be much easier. And you can use that as your core building blocks.
Well, I just want to say, as we wrap this part up, because Congressman Schweikert's here, but I tell you, you're all on my list. But the better thing than my list is Teresa Carlson's list, and the General Catalyst
yours is
Institute.
better.
It's one of my favorite kind of think tanks, do tanks, conveners, around what do we have to do by way of partnerships and opening. And I have to give you tons of credit that whether it was submarine building or looking at bringing back certain platforms in semiconductor chip manufacturing, the things I heard you're doing are extremely inspiring. I don't know if they're all going to flop, but I found them to be the most interesting technological, hope thing. I'm not a real hopeful guy. I like,
You are pretty.
yeah,
You
but I
actually
just
are.
think it's really great. So I want to thank Teresa Carlson,
you,
who's the CEO of the General Catalyst Institute, and I also love the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. And I have watched Maya work on this so much, and it really is amazing. And I think you're educating all of us, frankly, that it's not just a free gravy train. That there are consequences to some of the decisions we're making, and to some degree, it's robbing our ability to invest in some of this stuff. So please give a round of applause to Maya
Thank you,
McGinnis
Steve.
and Teresa
Thank
Carlson.
you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Maya, thank you.